Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Camilla.
I'm Z Garcia.
Today we're taking a look at a game called Mythwind, which the folks who made this game and everyone talking about it uses the same adjective to describe this game, and that's the word
Cozy.
Cozy.
Is it cozy?
It was cozy. I don't.
Look at that.
I don't get this. I guess that's the terminology for Animal Crossing / Stardew Valley.
Cozy.
Games like that, cozy. I haven't heard that term until this year or
You never heard the word
2023.
cozy before?
Not about games.
Oh, man.
But Mythwind is a cooperative game in which you are playing one of 4 characters. I know there's a 5th character added in an expansion. And you are building a city that's surrounded by fairies.
Yes.
That's the theme. And you can play, and you can play, and you can never stop.
Yes, it does not have an end game, right? Is that fair to say? So that's not a spoiler. Like, the game doesn't...
No, they tell you that in the rules.
Yeah, like, it does not have a natural end. You're not trying to... There's sort of like soft goals every time you sit down to play, but there's not a... And the game's now over, you either won or you lost, like most cooperative games.
Right. It's more of an experience as you're building this town.
I think it's going to be just like, you know, an app you play on the phone where you play and you play and you play and you play and then you're like, I haven't played that in a while. That's how this is going to be.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
All right, so with that in mind, here is how to play it.
Here we've got most of the components in the game. Let me go ahead and set this up, speed it up, and I'll show you what's going on in it. This is a game without an actual endgame trigger, and so in this game you're going to set it up, as you just saw me do. You are going to play through a season, modifying this town out here, changing things as you go, with your character, which is all packed up in one of these, and then at the end of that season, if you're done playing, you pack it all up, as you just saw, and you put it back in the box, and next time you pick up from that spot, okay? Each of these characters is going to play very differently. They each have their own booklet that is packed with the rules for that specific character, so I'm not going to dive too deeply into that. I'm just going to show you a couple of basic ideas, all right? In the game, you have this board, which is the town, and you are going to be, on your turn, taking actions on the board and on your own player area, trying to make money, do whatever it is that your character does in order to further your ability to basically improve the town. Buy buildings, explore, go on adventures, that sort of thing. This board over here has the extra dice, has an event deck over here, weather, which you're going to be dealing with each day. It has what you're trying to do this season right here, and then an adventure deck that is going to have little things that happen to you. It also has the money down here. And then every player, like I said, has a board with some goodies held underneath and is going to be, well, pretty different from the other ones. You've got these dice over here, which are workers, and we're going to be taking those. If you have any you are carrying from one season to the next, you just keep them in there and put the lid back on this thing, and you're good to go. So what does a round look like? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the book, and we'll figure that out together, all right? We've got here the phases are on the backs of all of these characters, and you'll see they're different because each player has different things that they are doing throughout the game. The main rule book has some symbols on the back, and will explain the general flow of the game, but I'm going to be using one of these to explain what is happening. And again, you can just assume that some of this will be different based on the character you are playing. So at the beginning, during the dawn of the day, you're going to determine the weather by flipping over one of these cards, and it tells you what the weather is. It also tells you if a special ability might take place, if an event might trigger, that sort of thing. You're going to check if there's a season event that affects you, then you're going to deal with that. You resolve that. And then we go to the daytime phase in which you do town actions and character actions, okay? The town actions, you're going to send your worker to one of these town actions, and you cannot go where somebody else is going. So I could go here, for example, and I can hire workers. These workers are going to come to me. I'll be able to use them in these locations. And they are going to tick down as I use them from 3 down to 2, down to 1, and then gone, re-rolled, added back out here. So you have to decide where you're going to go because, again, you cannot go where other people go that turn. And then you do whatever you do. So the farmer, for example, is going to plant. They have a bag which has in it tiles, and you are going to be pulling tiles from this bag, planting them on your farm, having them be watered and flipped over, and then selling them in order to make money. That's what the farmer is doing. You have a merchant who is basically buying low and selling high, meeting customers' demands. You have a ranger over there who is going to be going out on adventures. And in fact, the ranger spends quite a bit of time not in town. They're doing something else off of the board here. And then we've got the crafter who is moving goods along this production line, trying to manipulate prices and manipulate sort of costs of what they're doing. They're making things. They are crafting. Again, all of these have goodies down here for saving the game and for organizing it every time you set up a session. With the daytime actions done, then we go to the dusk, in which you're going to return your character, return your workers from where they've gone, and then anything else you need to do. The farmer needs to replenish the crop market. The crafter over here needs to fulfill requests, that sort of thing. They each have something they need to accomplish. One thing to point out is the locations out here. Of course, right now, there's only the longhouse that's built, but there's a deck of cards in here that you're going to be first opening these up and then building into them. This is land. There's something on the other side. It's a little bonus. And then you build a building in there that you'll set into place over here and sort of pay off. It sort of, is ready eventually. All of the other places that you can place workers are here, and then buildings. Right now you only begin, like I said, with one of these. When you go to one of these locations, it denotes if you can use the fairy workers or these other workers, and that also changes what you may use on your board. You'll notice every character is going to have an orange area and a blue area, and those are sort of different per player. There's also, each of these characters has some tiles that they are going to be able to build up to and put into place out here, so that when they take these abilities, these actions, they trigger some other special thing. And this is what lets you evolve and grow throughout the entire campaign. And again, I'll remind you, the campaign is really as long as you want it to be. There is no end. You just keep building this up, keep making money and spending it and building up things. There is a story deck, has events and adventures. So the events and many of these things will change and grow, and you'll encounter new things that happen in this town. So that's about as obscure a look as I can give you without going into what each of these people do. So we're going to go with that. You've seen some of the components now. You understand some of the basic flow and ideas. Let's go ahead and go back up top.
Let's start with components and rules and stuff, because it's an interesting bag here. It's really great, these trays. You pull them out, everything you have is in that tray.
Yes.
And there's a way to store it. They're very clear. Here's how to set up. Here's how to store it in each person's book. I give you your book. You look at your book. You store it away. The trays are not as great for playing.
Yes. Yes, I agree. They look so good. They look good. They sell well on a Kickstarter. And then you start playing and you're like, oh, things are kind of fiddly in here.
And they really do organize it well.
Oh, yeah.
It's well thought out. And this is where your whole deck goes. This is where your active deck goes, or the cards that you have in your... I'm talking specifically about I think it's the Traveler, is what it's, the Adventurer. But, these are the ones that are currently in your backpack. These are not. These are the extras. Like, it keeps it very well organized. And to take a step back, actually putting the game together and building those trays the first time is really easy and well done.
It's almost cozy, I would say.
I don't know if I'd go that far. No, no, but the punch board sheet is labeled. It's like labeled in little boxes, and it's like, this is for the Traveler, this is for the Merchant. It is fantastic to put together. It's very, some would say, cozy.
But let's see, I have not seen the farmer in action. That's one you played farmer.
That's bad. It's really bad. The little polyomino cardboard pieces, they don't fit in there. It's really annoying. It's very annoying.
And the merchant has these tokens that you stick in that they sit at a slant and then they fall in, and then you try to reach them and you're like, I'll just take off the top piece. Then they all fall over. And my daughter did that like 5 times. You know, she's like,
yeah.
But then, okay, but rules. I think the rule books are well written. I really do.
Yeah.
But when you get into this game, you need to realize that unless you're playing it solo, which you can very well do, it's a kind of a bear to teach people. Because you teach them the game, and then you either are going to spend time teaching each person their specific thing, or you hand them their own new rule book. And because they are so different on how they play, I can't say, well, this is like this. I mean, that central board is the same, but the way the farmer plays is completely different than the ranger.
Right.
Like, there's nothing the same about them.
The Rangers doesn't even go into town all the time. They have this whole other option of a round, you know.
So it makes it a hard game to teach, and also to look up a rule. I was struggling. I'd be like, is that in the main rule book? Is it in this rule book? I don't know where it is. And if I had a question, I wasn't sure. There's some very nice video tutorials online. I went and watched one of them because I wasn't quite sure. There was like a pretty important rule that I could read these rules either way, and it fixed it. I'm not faulting them for this necessarily because I don't know what they could have done better. You know, that's just the way the game is. But there is a lot, and I think it's a decent amount of overhead. It's not like, hey, on your turn, take one action. These actions are simple. Well, they are, but then you have your other simple actions, and then there's a bonus action, and then when you use the fairy or the worker human, and that there's a lot going on.
Right.
Once you get it, it works really well.
For such a, what I want to say, a simple game is what it feels like. Once you finally put all the pieces together, you realize like, oh, it's a pretty simple game, and it really does play in 30 minutes. A season is 30, maybe 35 minutes, not including the setup time.
Except the first one. Yeah.
Except the first one, yeah. Once you get it, like that's really impressive. A season is one session of it, maybe one season. And so I really like that about it. But that first play probably takes an hour, hour and 15. And that's a huge variance to go from like hour and 15 down to 30 minutes. It just shows the amount of like overhead and looking the rules up and that kind of stuff.
It took me 2 hours to go through that first play. I mean, there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
But again, I was looking up rules and doing this. And once it came through, I got it. So the game itself, and it's kind of weird because I was talking to Joey about this, and he's like, oh, you want fighting. And I was like, no, I don't know that I want fighting in a game. I don't need fighting in a game. But you know what I want a little bit of is conflict. It doesn't have to, conflict does not mean fighting. But conflict is maybe something to overcome.
Right.
And this game doesn't really have any of that.
You want a drive, right? Like
the only drive this game has is a single, what's it called, a goal card or something?
Yeah, every season has one thing, like, hey, adventure twice. It's like, done. Got it.
Or you're like, I wasn't planning to do that, but I guess I will now.
Why not?
Right,
yes.
yeah.
I was in one season. I actually was like, well, I was going to take my ranger out on a trip, but I guess everyone needs to do this one thing, so I'll do it.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But also, do you guys think the story was compelling?
I found it interesting. I mean, I think the events and then the adventures in the town, those are some of the most interesting parts. As you know, at one point there was like a boulder that fell and we moved it, and underneath was some of the fairies. We know if they were good or bad and had to make a choice. And I did find them interesting.
Actually, we went in assuming the fairies were good, and nothing kind of dissuaded us from that. Like,
because you've probably played these kind of video games, and we should probably just talk about that. This is very much trying to be, I'll pick the most famous, Stardew Valley in a box, right? You know, in those games, you know, whatever, Story of Seasons, Stardew Valley, those kinds of games, a lot of them have fairies. They're always good. They help you farm or water your crops or something, you know what I mean? And I like those kinds of games. I enjoy that sort of cyclical nature of you get up every day, you water your crops, you brush the cows, you go out and do this thing in town. It's that in a board game. I don't know why it does not bother me that those games don't really have a goal. You just can live in this world. In this one, it just felt pointless, man. It just felt very mundane to do this whole like. And those story moments to me weren't enough. They weren't. They were. Yeah. They break up the cyclical. I almost said monotony. It's not that it's monotonous, but there is sort of like a repetitive nature to it. They broke that up a little bit, you know. But I didn't find them compelling.
It's really interesting you say it that way because I think I am opposite of you. I do find those games to be a little bit monotonous.
Yeah.
You know, like go and point and click and water your crops and the stories. I always skip the stories. I'm like, I don't care what Farmer Fred came to say at my farm. I like skip. I do not care at all. I like it's so I find them to be repetitive and monotonous. I don't find it in this. And so it's just interesting that we're just on the saying the same thing. I swing one way, you swing the other on that.
Right.
For me, though, I had two problems with this game. Once you get into the game, you're like, okay, it's really easy. The weather, you do your stuff, and the mini games are fun. And I would argue that they're not equally fun, but again, that might be your personality. Like I thought the Ranger was way more interesting than, say, the merchant selling and doing goods. The merchant's fine, but the Ranger, you're out doing adventures-ish, sort of. But the two problems I have are twofold. One is that central town, that whole thing. It's like, oh, this cool town we're building up. There's no impetus for building the town because almost every building you get, and you can look ahead at the buildings. So I looked at most of the buildings are like, you could spend some money to get a resource. What's that resource used for? To build other buildings. Okay, fine. What does this one do? This one lets you trade a resource in and some gold to get a different resource. Okay, yay. What does this building do? Every round, you get a resource. Okay, I'm starting to see a trend here. and that combined with the fact that if we're playing, I didn't play with you guys, but I played with my kids.
Right.
We did not have anything to do with each other. We could have lived in completely different towns for all I knew.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's my big issue there. That's the big one for me, is that they came up with different games. Like you're saying, there's a lot of rules because everybody's kind of playing a different game. And that would be wildly impressive if we crossed at all. If me farming meant I raised crops for you to sell to town. Right. And then, or give some to the adventurer to eat out on the adventures. None of that happens. I don't need either one of you there to play this game. Like, at all.
Well, right, so the town is at crossing point. The town is at crossing point, but those buildings are all about the town. They're not about you. If I could build a building that then you would go, ooh, if I go there, I can get one of my upgrades. Well, there is one building. That's the one that starts in town. But I get something for me. I get some stuff for me. And I'm like, yeah, I helped you out, Z, because I built that building. You need it built.
Right.
But the town is almost there as just another game we're all playing together. So I'm building up my own character. Yeah. And we're all building up the town. But they don't really have a lot of correlation other than I need the fairies and who gets to do the adventure this turn.
Yeah, it does seem, for a cooperative game, it was weird to feel that disconnect. It's like cooperative, multiplayer solitaire. And multiplayer solitaire is usually something you find more in like your Euro games, head downs, things like that. So I felt like that was very, I was kind of at crossroads with that. It didn't bother me as much because I was very engaged with what I was doing. I was the ranger as well, and I really enjoyed that character and kind of the little adventures they go on. But it was a little bit, because there was a couple times where it's like, if I come back in town, then I can trade out this meat in order to get that, which then you needed, the coin. Okay, give me one more round, I can get you a couple coins in there. I can get you one of those resources that we needed, something like that. But it is very 90% multiplayer solitaire.
Right.
And then my other problem with the game is you're building up your character, and you're building it up at increments of 0.01. And I just didn't find that to be interesting. I played the Ranger, and I played for hours and hours and hours, and by the time I was done, I was slightly better than the beginning. And that's where I find the biggest thing between Animal Crossing and these other things. Because in those games, I'm doing all kinds of things. I haven't played Stardew Valley, so I use Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing, you start with this immense debt for no reason. You got to pay it off. So you do all these things. You go, da-da-da-da-da. I pay my debt off. Now you can do what you want. Hey, I can build myself a house. I build a house. Oh, I do this. I'm going to plant trees over here, and I'm accomplishing these cool things. When I played the Ranger, I was like, instead of playing 2 level 1s and a level 2, now I can play 2 1s and 2 2s. I was like, woo. And I got 2 maps. I can sell them for $10. And it just felt like I never got to get cooler. I was just slightly better. And even if I pushed my die all the way to the top and got all my special abilities, I would still just be slightly better than the very beginning of the game. And that's fine if playing the game was this fascinating thing. Playing the game was fun. It's interesting. Not for 20 hours. It's not good enough to last that long. I don't want to keep playing this same little mundane mini game that long. And that's my biggest problem with the game is I played the Ranger, and it's about switching the cards, and I was also helping my kids out, so I saw their, and she's buying and selling and buying and selling and buying and selling and buying and selling. I don't want to buy and sell for 20 hours, even if we split it to an hour a week or whatever.
Right.
When I play these legacy games and other games, I come back and we're like, ooh, what's slightly different? Even I'm looking for big changes, but slight changes, and like, well, the Ranger, I'm drawing. I get to take 5 cards on my trip instead of 4.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to this game is trying to be, again, cozy. I know we're joking about it, but it's trying to be a cozy feeling game. And if that sounds cozy to you,
yeah,
then maybe this is a game for you. To me, it sounds boring. And I'm with you. You know, it's that feeling of, I'll do this a couple of times, see what it does, read a couple of those cards and see what's happening. I am not putting hours into this like I would Stardew Valley or Animal Crossing or whatever, because I find those more interesting. Plus, I can like press one button and I'm done cleaning up. Press one button and it's set up and I can keep going. And this one, you know, they do a good job trying to get close to that, but you can't really do that. So I agree. I just find that instead of cozy, it falls on the side of repetitive and monotonous and not enough evolution to hook me.
Do you want me to go into my final thoughts here? Okay, yeah.
Do it.
I'm going to come in at a 7 on this one. I find, I think opposite of what you're saying. I do find this to be cozy. I think I really enjoy campaign games, and I like the big changes you're talking and going the world, the big exploration. That's not what this is. This is every couple weeks or so, I want to sit down and play 2 or 3 sessions and then table. Like you were saying, that app that you haven't played in a while. Oh, I'm going to open that up. Oh, that was cool. And then I table it for a little bit longer. This is a game that I could see having for a long term, and I poke away at over 2 or 3 years. And I do keep going back because it is comfortable. Once you have the rules, now that I know how to play the Ranger, I think I could go 6 months and play it again without having to relearn the game. I can't do that in 95% of the campaign games that I love. So for me, it's going to give that feeling that I put time into this. It's kind of become my little personal. Is it going to blow me away? No, but am I going to enjoy revisiting it and bringing it back to the table every couple weeks, maybe a month, something like that? Yeah, absolutely. And so for me, it's a 7. It's not going to blow me away, but it's one that I want there on the shelf that I'll pull out every now and then and have some nostalgia and a good time in.
Well, I do want to say I pull out these guys for putting this together. This is, it's kind of an experimental game to some degree.
It is, and it's different, yeah.
And they definitely put effort into it. They put a lot of thought into production. Not all of it worked, but they definitely thought it and put the effort in. And a lot of my complaints about that sort of thing is not here. I'm saying some of the production didn't work, but I think they put the effort in. And from little things like those cards on the board, you press it, they pop up, they're easy to turn over.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
I like all that. But, you know, you're mentioning apps. Those apps that I play, those cozy apps that they are, whatever they might be, I go into them and you just get better as time goes by. You really do. And then I get bored of them and I pause. And I thought about this because this morning I opened one up I hadn't played in a while and I was like, oh, there's something different, because there is. They have holiday events. They do different things. They keep you interested. Otherwise, people wouldn't go back. There's something new here. If you try this, it's different. Here, the biggest difference would be like, I'm tired of playing this character. I'll switch and play another one. And maybe that will work. As a solo game, I could see playing this and switching between the 4 characters. You know, maybe this week I'm going to play this one. This week I'll play that one. And I wouldn't even mind if you were playing together and you're like, I'm done with my character. I'm like, fine. You know? But other than that, it just doesn't reach any kind of level of excitement for me. And I get that you're like, well, it's supposed to be cozy. But I need something interesting. And I just wasn't discovering new things. I only opened one of the envelopes, and it was like, oh, it's more the same stuff. That's the way I felt. So, again, I get why people like it, but it's not for me. It's almost there. I just need a bit more something. Again, I use the word conflict, and I don't mean fighting with swords and dragons and all that, but something to overcome, maybe.
What are you giving it?
Oh,
What's your score?
a 5. I'm sorry. I know it sounds really bad. I just don't love the game. But idea-wise, I give it like an 8, you know, in a sense. Like, I applaud it's just not for me.
I'm also giving it a 5, so I'm right there with you. And I had the perfect example of exactly what you're talking about in those kinds of games. In those kinds of games, one of the most mundane things they do is when the season changes and I'm a farmer and I'm planting carrots over here, now I can go and I can buy pumpkin seeds. And that's real stupid. It's the same thing. I go, I buy them, maybe they take a day extra to grow or something and they sell for a slightly different value. But you know what? They look like pumpkins on the screen.
Yeah.
That's a little something. In this game, as the farmer, it's the same 3 things. Forever, and forever, and forever, and forever.
Teach
and
you
I
what
was
being
like,
a farmer's like, see?
yeah, it is.
Although, would we not agree that the farmer in this game would, like, kill almost anyone in any other game? Have you seen that farmer?
Oh,
He's like,
he's an absolute,
like, oh my word,
yeah.
I'm sorry, dude.
Yeah, he's an absolute animal. This is a cute world, and again, they get an A for the effort, and again, there are probably people, you like it, and I'm sure there are people out there who are going to adore this game exactly for the things that it doesn't try to do, and for what for picking a new lane and being like, this is what we're making. You like it, you don't like it, this is for someone out there, you know, that's fantastic. I'm just not that someone. I want a little more, like you're saying, I want it to be a little more evolution maybe, a little something else. So yeah, I'm there with you, out of 5.
Well, there you go, folks. That's Mythwind. I'm Tom Basil.
I'm Camilla.
I'm Z Garcia.
Have fun with your coziness.
Ooh, cozy.